I knew I was going to be a barber very, very young. And I've been a barber for longer than I haven't been a barber. And it was something about, being in a barber shop as a young kid. Again, we got to go way, way back to before barbering was a cool kind of lifestyle. It was just another trade back then. Do you know what I mean? It was a guarantee of learning something that was going to feed you. The hair never fascinated me in the early days because, you could imagine growing up in the 80s in a small city in the Republic of Ireland, there wasn't many, cool people around. Not that there wasn't many cool people around, of course there was people who were cool, but, fashion was never a big part of my early young life. Do you know what I mean? Style certainly wasn't. But being in the barber shop, it was like you go in there after school or your dad would bring you in on a Saturday and all of a sudden, it was up a stairs into a room where there was noise, smoke, jokes, warmth. I can still smell it and I still feel it. And that's what fascinated me. Do you know what I mean? It was acting and talking like a man when you weren't a man, without any recourse. Do you know what I mean? I remember being able to sneak in a sneaky swear word and nothing be said to me for it. Do you know what I mean? Whereas if I did that at home, I would have got a smack in the back of the head. I just started, working weekends, do you know what I mean, in the place where I was getting my hair cut. It grew from there. So the love of hair came out of the love of the barbershop. So that's why I knew, because I had worked weekends, in a place where my mother got her hair done for a while. I didn't like it one bit, do you know what I mean? So in the early days, it wasn't the hair. You know what I mean? It was the atmosphere of the barbershop, and that's what pulled me back time and time again, and that's what pulled me back to being a barber, There's a certain amount of notoriety about it. I think everybody wants to be the best at what they do in some way, shape or form. Whether it is the best at, running a shop, whether it is the best of physically cutting hair, or whether it is the best of anything. For me, I love the physical aspect of cutting hair and I love the technical aspect of it, but I pride myself on being a barber first and a hair cutter second. And for me, being a barber is being a shopkeeper, being a host, and the haircut is secondary to that. And I've always said that the haircut becomes invisible after it gets to a certain level. After it gets to a certain level of good, then no one notices anymore. It becomes an add-on to what else you're selling. Do you know what I mean? And for me, I'm a service provider, and I sell a service, I sell a feeling, I don't like to use the word experience, but I sell an atmosphere. We just happen to have that percentage right. Our percentage of the haircut is right. Our percentage of the hosting is right. And our percentage of the atmosphere is right. And put all that into one little package. And I believe we're the best in the world at it. I do it to make people feel good, but I also do it to make me feel good, That's what I don't understand, why you do something and not want to be the very, very best at it. Being the best hair cutter, that's the opinion of your competition. I cut your hair, you'd probably think I'm the best hair cutter you've ever seen, right? I cut his hair and he probably thinks I'm the best hair cutter he's ever seen. I don't do it for the approval of my competition. I do it for the approval of my customers. It's one of those things that you take something and you start it. And it starts at a level. And at the time, it was a level that I was able for. It was a level I could afford. And it was a level where I wanted to be. And I did pretty good. I made a good living out of it. It was a busy little shop in Castletroy in Limerick City. I remember, that's when I started looking at other things. I knew what I was charging. I felt I could charge more. I wanted to charge more, but why would they pay more? I saw what women's hairdressers were charging. I saw what women's hairdressers were charging men for an inferior product. When I say inferior, I mean men were chair warmers at the time. Do you know what I mean? You go in and, a guy went into a hairdresser's. He went in there thinking he was going to get a better result than the barbershop, because the barbershops were kind of spitting sawdust at the time. But he didn't. You know what I mean? He didn't get what he thought he was going to get. And I was thinking, well, how can I make a fella want to pay what he pays in a hair salon, in a barbershop? So then it started to become experiential then. Do you know what I mean? It started to say, right, I have to give him something more than a haircut. As much as I love cutting hair, I've always said a barbershop is much, much more than a haircut. Always was, always will be, always has to be. Well, how do I tart this up? How do I put a big ribbon around this box and sell it for more? How do I make it worth what I'm charging for it? Had to dress a bit better, had to act a bit better, had to treat people a bit better, which we did anyway, but We had to make a conscious effort of smiling when you didn't feel like smiling, laughing when you didn't feel like laughing, dressing up, shutting up and showing up. We always gave tea and coffee. So I said, I'm talking back in the early 2000s. Well, why not give them a beer? Better yet, why not give them a beer from a tap? I know, I'll put a bar in there. Right? And that was a decision I made around 2008 maybe. But I didn't want to just put a bar in there. I wanted to have a guy working behind the bar in there. I knew loads of barmen, so I got a young fella in there and I gave him like 50 quid to work 4 hours on a Saturday. And all of a sudden, people really, really started talking about it, right? And they started, so much so that there was like guys who never been to the shop before, like it got featured on the local radio station. Now in those days, if I got featured in like that was for me, that was my Tonight Show moment. Do you know what I mean? You were mentioned on Limerick's 95 FM. You know what I mean? I was like, wow. But the thing is, everyone listened to the radio, so everyone heard it, and everyone talked about it. That fella plays out in Castletroy, he's got a bar in his shop. No one spoke about the haircuts. And that's eureka. Well, no one cares about the haircut. They do, but they don't care once it's not crap. And they don't care once it's the good side of average. It's everything else. This is why they're queuing for 3 hours. This is why my shop is upstairs. This is why there's people queuing on the stairs. They're not queuing for the haircut. They're queuing for the treatment because men never got that treatment. So I knew I was onto something. And I had a customer, Morgan, who's now my partner, and he had property in the UK. He actually used to own this building where the shop is. He was always saying to me, too big for this kid, you're too big for this kid, you need to go to England, you need to go to England. I've got a place in England now, it'd be great for you. And now, again, you can imagine saying that to a 29-year-old man, 30-year-old man who's just had a new baby, who had a decent life, a decent business. You may as well say, I've got a good place in the moon, and you should open on the moon, and you're going to make $1 million, right? That's what it sounded like, because why would I move from my home? Why would I leave a successful business for a what if? But he was adamant. He was like, you need to do it, you need to do it. It'll fly. Do what you're doing here, but do it better over there. There's more people, the English fellas love themselves more. I remember saying it to my wife, Caroline, and she was so used to me. I always had ideas. And it was kind of, yeah, okay, look, whatever. It was like she got immune to my ideas. Always supported me, but she was immune to it because I had a different idea every week. She said, yeah, why don't you try it? Go over and have a look. So I came over, walked into this room upstairs in, I want to say it was probably February 2012. And I walked in, this used to be a travel agent. And I walked in and I went, this is it. I could see and I could feel what it was going to be. And November 2013, we opened the doors and that was it. It just went, flew. The intention was the one shop. There was never an intention of 2 or 3 or 4. Well, not by me anyway. I think Morgan had something in his mind that he didn't want to reveal just yet. But he was always a big thinker. I was always a bit of a workhorse. I was never afraid of a day's work. But after 3 months, I knew I wasn't going home. Whatever happened, whether it was 1 or 100, I wasn't going back to Ireland. Do you know what I mean? So the second shop was Liverpool, and they came to us. We didn't look for it. So Liverpool One Shopping Centre, they approached us about it. I finished work one day and Morgan goes, we're going to Liverpool, kid. So we went down and we had a look at that. And again, it was weird because the buildings kind of came to us. When we didn't actively, go around and see 50 sites and go, oh, this is the one for us. Like, people wanted us where we wanted to be. It was fucking very strange. All of a sudden, Liverpool opened up and that was big. And then we opened in Leeds, and then we opened in London, and then we opened another one in Manchester. And it wasn't suffocating, do you know what I mean? But it was like all of a sudden, everybody knew what Barber Barber was. Whether they loved it, whether they hated it. They knew what it was. And for me, that was the first time I really looked at the business as a brand. You know what I mean? I was thinking, this is not just a barbershop. This is not, and I hate to say not just a barbershop, because to me a barbershop is everything. But, this isn't just a couple of barbershops. This is a card-carrying brand. People know what it is. You know what I mean? People who've never been in here would see it. Oh, I saw that place on social media, or I saw that, we were on the TV quite a bit. And they loved it or they hated it. But there was nobody in between. There was nobody going, meh. It was either yes or For me, that's a brand. You know, people either love it or they hate it. You can't be vanilla, you can't be on the fence. You know what I mean? You gotta set your stall out the way you want it and sell it to the people that you want to sell it to. And that's what we did. We were very, very good at selling to the people who wanted us. And we were very, very good at not giving a fuck what the people who didn't want us thought about us. So a good barber can't be fashion-led. Here's the thing, this is all my opinion here now, right? So this is not me standing in a pulpit preaching from a gospel, right? This is what my opinion is, and this is how I believe it should be done, and this is how I do it. You know, and it mightn't be the right way, but it's certainly my way, and it's worked for me, so I'm gonna keep going with it. So for me, they have to have an element of taste and style, right? And someone said to me a long time ago, you can only be as good as your taste. You know what I mean? If you have shit taste, then you're going to be shit, aren't you? If you've got great taste, then you're going to be great. You know, if you've got a combination of technique and taste, then you're going to be limitless. You're going to be limitless. There's nobody can tell you nothing. You know, you can learn, you can create, you can do things that normal people can't do when it comes to hair, style, fashion, right? I like people to do their research before they come for an interview here, because I've had people walk through the door in a tracksuit looking for a job, and I've kind of gone, do you not get the memo? For me, you gotta have an element of style about you. Now, it doesn't have to be my style, but you have to have a style in order to be teachable, you see. Because if you got a sense of style, you can be teachable. Do you know what I mean? If you don't have a sense of style, you'll be led. There's a difference between teachable and being led. Being led is like being blind, and you're just going. You're going with the flow. Being teachable means you question, right? And if you question, then you learn. If you're led, you rarely learn. I know this sounds a hell of a lot, because at the end of the day, all we do is cut hair and shake people's hands. But for me, this is all very, very important. This is why I believe this will stand the test of time, when all the other people have gone back to their hair salons and decided it's not cool as they thought, and they've gone back and they've done something else. You know, so this is why this barbershop brand will last 100 years, last longer than me, a hell of a lot longer than me, because there's a culture here. You know, and I think the difference between us and everybody else is we cater for men. Do you know what I mean? We don't cater for the palates of, you know, people who are always searching for the next big thing. What we do it forever. You know, it's like Ralph Lauren said, it's not about nostalgia, it's not about yesterday, it's about forever. You know, men will always be men, and our men will always be our men. Do you know what I mean? We get a guy who doesn't want to put too much thought into it. You know what I mean? He already has an element of style to him. He just needs somebody to bring it out without the faff that you get with a lot of places. You know what I mean? So we're professional enough and we're knowledgeable enough to know what our customer wants to look like. Do you know what I mean? So we don't actually have to sell him something. We're not trying to sell him another image, and we're not trying to sell him a makeover. We're just going to read what he says, and interpret that and put it on his head. So basically, he already has that style. What we're doing, we top it up every 6 weeks. That's not to say everybody comes in to our shop as a centerfold. No, they're not. We get all types of guys. Do you know what I mean? But our customer generally tends to find us, because I set out this all so strong all those years ago. Do you know what I mean? They know what to get when they come in. 2 reasons to move into the product business. Number 1 was to control your own supply, and number 2 was to do something that hadn't been done, because, as you know, the market's busy, but it's not saturated. I believe that the perfect product hadn't, until now, been done. You go all the way back, because again, we were always a second thought men. Men were always a second thought. And there was a couple of men's brands came up, and some really, really big men's brands, and they did very, very well. But they were the only ones to do it very well. So you imagine starting any business, and in my mind, I only had 1 competition, possibly 2. Now, could you imagine entering a business where you only have 2 people to be really competitive with? Because I don't think there is many businesses in the world where there's actually really 2 contenders. I was thinking I can still probably do a little bit better than what they're doing, you know, because I've used the products, and the products, as amazing as they are, I personally found holes in them. And if I was finding holes in them, as a professional, then surely as a customer, they're going to find real holes in it. One of the big things I've always said, even the best product used incorrectly on the wrong hair is a bad product, right? As a professional, I can make a shit product look really good because I know how to use it and I know how to manipulate it. I could probably use a product that you would buy in a pound shop for 50p, and I could probably use it in such a way that you think it was the best product in the world, but it's not, of course it's not. Alternatively, I could give you the best product you've ever seen, not tell you how to use it, and you think it's shit, or average, or meh. Mine was to not only make the best product, was, you know, take into consideration, and even when I was doing my research, you know, listening to what people say about certain products, brilliant products, ones that I've lived and died by for years, and they always found something wrong with them. Oh, it's good, but, and the buts always went but, right? Same with the bads. There's a bad product, but why do you use that product? It's shit, I'd say to them. Yeah, but it does this. So there's a but. The shit product does something good, right? And then why do you use that? Or they tell me why to use it, you go, I love it, but, and then there's fucking but keeps coming up. There's always a but. One of the biggest things you'll ever hear, no buts. You know, we'll do this now with no buts. I was thinking, well, what if I make a product with no buts? And that was my main goal, was make a product with no buts. So the journey started about 5 years ago, going to different formulation houses, the best formulation houses. Going in there, yeah, we can do that. Pass one comes in, that's shit. Unfortunately, I have a habit of speaking before my brain registers what I'm about to say. So there's people who've been in the business for years and I'm saying, this is really shit. You know what I mean? They're kind of go, well, it's not, but no, it is. Or, you know, sometimes they got it kind of right, but there was always a but. I went through 3 or 4 different formulation houses. I even used one in America. They always got to a level. And I was thinking, if this is the best you can do, then I may as well not fucking bother doing what I'm doing, because I don't want to say it was shit. It wasn't shit. Of course it wasn't shit, because these people made products for some of the biggest companies in the world. But it was shit for what I wanted. Do you know what I mean? I wanted to do the work for my customer, or for my guy who was going to buy my product. I wanted to do the work for him. So he didn't have to put much thought in it. Just trust what's in the tub, trust the instructions on the tub, use it the way it's intended to be used, and the hair that it's intended to be used on. I will guarantee the best results for you. So once we got to a level with some of the formulation houses, that was just it. It got to the stage was even the new ones I got these new formulation houses, and they were good and they were this and that. I knew once I got the second round of samples and I used the second round of sample, it hadn't improved enough in the first round that I was confident enough for the third round. And I said, shit. You know, I started losing hope on it. So I started doing my own research on it then. And I started saying, well, I started figuring out what certain ingredients would do. Then I started figuring out, well, if I didn't put that ingredient in it, and if I spoke to a chemist who was competent enough, you know, because obviously I'm not a chemist, but what I am is I'm a layman who understands what a certain ingredient will or won't do in a product. And if I can find a chemist who can actually listen to what I'm saying in my everyday language and put that into their language and then put it into their brain and then put it into their knowledge, and then create something, give it back to me, and then we can start tweaking it back and forth, right? I remember the first round of samples I got, I was very, 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 very impressed. I was thinking, I'm going to push this a bit. What if I do this? Guys, can we do this? And then the answer was always yes. But not only was the answer always yes, it was yes and it was backed up. Do you know what I mean? Because every time I got a new sample, it was better than the last sample. And even times when the next sample wasn't as good as the first sample, we were able to go back and start again and improve on the first sample by doing something different than we did at the second sample. You know, my biggest thing in getting these products right was what they didn't do. It's what my products don't do. That's what sells them. To explain on that, we have our hair clays. They don't make your hair go dull, greasy, or change your color. They only give a nice, clean, matte effect. Very difficult to do. You know, the pomades that we have, they don't make the hair go crunchy, crispy, hard like a gel, but yet they're still shiny like a gel. You know, so it doesn't do that. And we have shampoo that doesn't make your hair grow puffy, but yet it still condition your hair. That is the hard thing to do, and that's what they do. Whereas they perform brilliantly, you know, for what they are: waxes, clays, texture pastes and shampoos and body washes. It's what they don't do to your hair. Not only do they make your hair look good, they're actually good for your hair. In the men's product world, that's not very, very common. Initially, men don't care what condition their hair goes into after using the product, once it does what it's supposed to do. But it's 6 and 7 and 8 and 9 and 10 months down the road, when their scalp is destroyed or when their hair is like straw. Well, I've been using this product and I liked it because it did that, but it's after destroying my hair. So with that, there's no worry of that happening with our products, because they're actively good for your hair. There's amazing ingredients. We use only the best ingredients. A lot of the ingredients are organic. They're kind for your hair, they're kind for your scalp, and they're also vegan and cruelty-free, which again is the way things are going. So again, getting cruelty-free products without using the animal products that are very, very common in a lot of hair products to perform without using the animal products, that's quite difficult in itself as well. But this, like, I've had guys already message me on social media, private message me on Facebook and all that, and say, "Oh God, that shampoo's amazing. Is there conditioner in it?" Because it's not a 2-in-1. It's not a 2-in-1 like £2 shampoo that it washes everything, washes your car as well. It's not a shampoo and conditioner in one. It's a shampoo that conditions your hair just enough to keep it in good nick, but not enough to fly away. That's the big one for it. So fragrance for me within a product has to be identifiable, has to be memorable, but it can't be overpowering. For me, it's like hair itself, right? And this sounds really, really strange, right? Your hair should never, ever, ever stand out, ever, as a man. You dress up, you wear shoes, you wear a suit, you wear a tie, you want to look amazing, right? You put time into identifying your style, right? The last thing you want is your hair to be the first thing people notice. And I don't care who you are, nobody wants their hair to stand out more than the suit they spent 6 weeks' wages on. They just don't. So the hair can't be part of it. And the same with fragrance. Fragrance has to be there, but it can't be the only thing that you recognize. That's why you wear aftershave. You know what I mean? So you can't have a hair product that's going to overpower your aftershave. You have to be able to smell it and go, "Oh, that's nice." But it has to disappear but still be there in a weird sense. You know what I mean? So it has to blend in to everything else. So it has to be masculine, but it has to be soft. It has to be memorable, but it has to be forgettable. But it has to be identifiable when somebody picks it up and goes, "Oh, that's Barber Barber." Even though they all smell different, they all smell the same, right? So I played around with the different notes, So we have two base, our main fragrances, and what we've done is, so for the body wash, we've got a higher level of one fragrance than we have of the other, but they still combine, right? And then in the clay products, we have the higher level of the other fragrance and the lower level of it, right? So even when you're using the shampoo and you use the body wash and you use the clay, even though they all smell different, when they melt together, they smell the same. The fragrances don't fight, they dance. Do you know what I mean? They dance with each other instead of fighting with each other. And that, again, that's very, very important. And I think it's something that people don't put enough thought into. You know what I mean? That's the thing. I've thought about everything here. And there's a conscious decision behind every single ingredient that's in those products. And I know exactly what's in there and I know exactly what it does. But most importantly, I know what they don't do. And that's what I'm confident in. So 9 to 5 indicates to me all day, or in fact all night. So 9 in the morning to 5 at night, or 5 at night till 9 in the morning. That indicates it's going to hold all day. It's going to do what it's supposed to do all day. Even the best product on the wrong head is a bad product, right? So then I had to start thinking about what type of hair is it for. It's a pliable matte clay. It's not heavy, but it's ideal for kind of 3 inches or above hair that's fine to medium density. Why is that important? Well, it's important because you need enough coverage to cover the hair. It needs to be strong enough to hold the hair, but it needs to be light enough to let your hair move, right? But the guy who uses clay, he likes a bit of hold, so it has to have hold in it. So this is where we started messing around with different types of holding agent. So we use candelilla wax in this. We also use 2 different types of organic clay. We've kaolin and we have bentonite. Kaolin clay is to keep it supple. is to keep it soft, so it's not that really, really hard, kind of hard to work into your hand clay. It's quite easy to use, and the bentonite is to give that matte effect, but it's to give it a really clean matte effect instead of matting your hair a little bit. You know what I mean? Like matte for me is just a dry, clean finish. Whereas a lot of times with a lot of products, and people who know what I'm talking about will know what I'm talking about, that they can sometimes use a matte clay and it can almost make the hair look dull or greasy. This won't do that, you know. So again, because the products are such high grade formulas, less is more. And when you're using them, it's very, very important to kind of, you know, test the level. You know what I mean? So start with a little bit, layer the product all the time. Just, you know, put a little bit in. If you think you need more, use more. You rarely need less if you just use a little pea-sized amount. You know what I mean? So that's why 9 to 5 is a great product. 9 to 5 would be your kind of, your all-rounder. Your average guy who just is here, nice, neat, short back and sides, wants a little bit of hold, a little bit of movement. So generally, like a short texture or a little bit of a quiff. Fine to medium density, a little bit of movement in it, you know. So that would be the 9 to 5. So you're talking your short back and sides, your loose crops, and your natural side partings, your quiffs and such. So tough enough indicates that it's tough, that it's strong. We designed this specifically with coarse, thick, unruly hair in mind. So now we have 3 different types of clay in it. And we put more Candela wax than we put into that. We also have jojoba wax in it, so again, which is good for your scalp. We've used a product in this called diatomaceous earth, so it's like a mattifying powder. The bentonite and the kaolin, whereas it's brilliant on the fine to medium density hair, it got lost in the thick hair. So we needed to add something to actually give that matte look, but still hold it, you know, without weighing it down. So it amplifies the matte effect. It doesn't make the hair matte, but it amplifies what the kaolin and what the bentonite already do. You know what I mean? So you've got a really, really strong holding clay, which you don't again have to overuse. And that's the problem. A lot of guys with thick hair, they tend to think, well, I just use more. But if you use more, it'll be counterproductive. It'll just stick your hair together. So you don't have to use more. You just have to use this if your hair is thick. Well, Tough Enough has been designed with thick, coarse, unruly hair in mind. You know, so again, a little goes a long way. The best way to use a product is to layer it into the hair. I've said there's 2 ways of doing it. There's Easy Does It and there's Knock 'em Dead. Easy Does It is for the guy who's in a rush. You know, he just gets out of the shower, towel dries his hair, puts a little bit in, works it straight through from root to tip, and lets it do its own thing, let it dry naturally. If it's a thing he's going out and he wants to put a little bit more effort in it, there's a double application. Now the double application is very, very important, especially in men's products. When you put the product in towel dried hair, what it does is it allows you to use a little bit of product, but it allows you to cover your hair from root to tip. So you're completely covering your hair in the product, but not so much that you're weighing it down. So you use a little bit, you work it well into your hands, and you bring it all the way through from root to tip. Then you dry your hair. When you dry your hair, then you just get another little bit, work it into your hands, and work it through the surface of the hair. So now what you have is, you've got complete coverage from root to tip and along the mid-length of the hair. And then when you put the second application on, which again I have to stress is a tiny, tiny amount, you know, it's up to you what you need for it, that gets complete coverage down on the surface. The story behind the name Tough Enough, it's tough enough for everything. You know, again, it's to coincide with the hair. You know, if you've got thick, tough, strong hair, well, this product is tough enough for it. The Tough Enough is ideal for thick hair that's cut short and choppy. The French crop, or you know, these very, very tight fades and short textures on top. Tough Enough is an amazing product for that. A texture product that doesn't weigh your hair down. The secret, and it's not a secret obviously because I'm telling you about it, but the key to a good texture product is movement, right? Not saturation, not gluing something together. This is what was the hard part of making this product. It had to be strong enough to hold the hair in place, but it had to be light enough to allow it to move freely, you know what I mean? And to bring out that natural texture in your hair. That in its sense, that was the first thing I had to get across to the chemist, was how we're going to hold someone's hair in place without weighing it down. So what you need a lightweight texture cream that's going to turn into a paste, or a paste that turns into a cream, whichever way you want to say it. But it has to be activated by the heat, it has to be activated by bringing it through, but more importantly, it has to be really, really light enough to cover the hair completely with a very, very small amount of product. How the hell do you do that? Now, I'm not going to tell you how we do it, right? But what I will tell you is how to use it. It's very, very light, but it's very, very powerful. And powerful doesn't, it's not strong in the sense that it's going to hold your hair in place. It's not going to weigh your hair down, and it's not going to stick your hair together. It will cover all your hair, but it will still allow your hair to move. So again, the double application is very, very important on it. You put a little bit into towel dried hair, work it through your hands, covers the whole hair from root to tip again, and then you put a tiny bit more on the surface when the hair is dry. That will keep you going all day long. So with this, there's a lot. Again, it's not just for your hair. This again is for your scalp. So there's a multivitamin complex in it. There's B3, there's vitamin C, there's vitamin D. So the two main ingredients in this product is raw sea salt and jojoba oil. Now, obviously the sea salt is to create that beachy sea salty texture, but the jojoba oil and the vitamin complex that are in it is to also care for your scalp as well. Very, very important that you care for your scalp as well as care for your hair. This is really good for curly hair. It's really good for longer length hair with a bit of movement. As I said, a texture product shouldn't hold your hair in place just to hold your hair in place. It should hold your hair in place and allow it to move freely, but also have a memory that you can redo it and redo it and redo it throughout the day. And that's what is brilliant about this product. With men's hair, men's long hair especially, see, it was forgotten about. A guy had long hair, he used the women's hair product. That's what you did. Or you used the wrong product. So again, this was designed specifically with long hair in mind. So your hair grows half an inch a month. Over the course of a year, that becomes 6 inches. So 6 inches is our product for long hair. Again, it's a weightless texture and control foam. Ton up, again, this goes back to style, subculture, the meaning behind products, right? So pomade is usually associated with Americana, rock and roll, the Teddy Boys, the rockabillys, So if you go back to the 60s, when America had the rockabillys, the UK, Britain had the ton-up boys, and it was kind of, you had your Triumph and you had to get a ton-up. So the ton-up was 100 on the speedometer, and it became known as a ton-up boys. So it's just a little nod to the past, really, and it's a little nod to that particular style. So guys who generally use pomades, water-based or grease-based, they tend to have that kind of biker, rock and roll type vibe about them. Water-based pomades kind of became very, very popular in the 90s, because people got sick of the grease. They got sick of the damage that grease-based products generally do to not just your hair, it's to your scalp. You know what I mean? They form a coating on the scalp, and it just creates all sorts of problems. Trying to get a water-based pomade that performs like a grease in the sense that it doesn't dry out the hair, and it doesn't make the hair go crispy. It doesn't make the hair go hard like a gel would. That was the big problem with this one. So that took quite a bit of work. This works in a way that other water-based pomades don't. It goes through the hair really, really smoothly. Whereas a lot of water-based pomades, you put them into the hand and put them into the hair, especially when they go into dry hair, it kind of goes like that, and you have to really work it through, and you have to kind of overcomb the hair. And by overcombing the hair, you're actually going to comb a lot of the product out. This doesn't really start setting for about 5 or 6 seconds. Do you know what I mean? So when you put it in, it feels, oh, this is very light. But you get the comb through it. After a couple of seconds, it starts to work. And then you go, oh Jesus, that's really working. That's the one thing, a lot of feedback we've gotten this. People who have used to use grease-based products have now started using water-based pomade, and it's very, very hard to get a hardcore greaser who lives and dies by oil-based pomade to come over to the dark side of water-based, you know what I mean? And we've managed to do that, so very happy with that one. Classics will be around forever, and there's going to be a certain amount of people forever and a day will have that Ivy League, preppy Harvard look, and the rockabillys and the pompadours and the quiffs but it's like a healthy shine. People who like a shiny hair, or people who like the hair to be shiny, really contoured looking. That's the product for it. Right, so Double Barrel is our shampoo, and it's one of the ones I'm actually most proud of. Traditionally, men don't put a lot of thought into shampoo. I mean, I know guys who wash their hair with shower gel, who wash their hair with their kid shampoo. I know some fellas who wash their hair with dog shampoo, and they've done it. You know what I mean? It's not a regular thing, but I know a guy who's done that. Men's hair, again, is always been forgotten about when it comes to shampoo, but it's such an important part. The shampoo is such an important part of your hair routine, right? For men, how do you make a shampoo that's not going to strip your hair of its natural oils, that's going to care for your scalp and your hair, but also going to condition your hair enough, right, to allow it to perform and to allow it to be styled again the very next day? Because the amount of guys, and this was the big thing in the research phase of this, was most guys who don't wash their hair every day want to wash their hair every day, but they feel if they wash it every day, then they can't style it. So that was the light bulb moment there. So how do we get the same day clean with the day after feeling? And I remember speaking to the chemist in the early days about that, and I had to explain what I meant by same day clean and the next day feeling. And then she got it pretty quickly when I said it. She goes, yeah, because when you wash your hair, and even as women, they prefer it the day after. Men certainly do. Some fellas prefer it the second day after. So we had to figure out a way how we were going to condition the hair without making it fly away, and how we were going to clean it, without making it harsh. So we came up with Double Barrel. It's not a 2-in-1. I have to stress, it's not a 2-in-1 conditioner. It's a conditioning shampoo. So there's just enough conditioner in this to kind of zap the hair back into shape, to allow it to be styled. So it's a process. So it does enough to allow it to be styled by one of these guys. So Morning Glory, this is the last one in the range of our first launch of products. We've got probably 13 more to come out. But this was kind of the icing on the cake. When I was making it, or making the range, what everyone said was, geez, they smell lovely. Do you know what I mean? It's just, it was an add-on, it was an afterthought. To be perfectly honest, it was an afterthought. I said, yeah, let's make a body wash that smells like the products. Your hair you've got 3 zones to your head, right? You got the front, you got the apex, you got the crown, okay? Now, with a haircut, what you try to do is you try to even out the density of the hair. That's the number one, is it's proportion, right? And when you apply product, you've got to do it proportionally. Even on the thickest head of hair, the front area here, that's the lightest. Apex, a little more, crown is the strongest, right? So what's that tell you? That tells you that even when you apply product, the front needs the least amount, the middle needs a little more, in around the crown, the back, that needs the most. So you got to allow that thought process into the application of a product. So I always tell people when I cut the hair, right, work the product into your hands. Start at the back, go to the top, finish at the front. Because that's what your hair needs. Your hair needs the most at the back, a little in the middle, and the least amount at the top. It's just a little bit of the end. But that's why the double application is very, very important if you really want to kind of keep your hair in check all day. You've got to cover the hair from root to tip. And cover doesn't mean saturate. Cover means cover it, So by doing that, putting it in when the hair is wet, work it through to allow the product to work itself. If you want to leave it dry naturally, great. If you want the hair to be a little bit more relaxed, but if you want that bit of structure in it, you need to dry the product into the hair, allow it to do what it's due, and then you need to put another little bit on the surface of the hair just to lock it in place. So that's your easy does it, and you're knocking dead the instruction from the back of every tub. The most successful brands believe in what they sell. They're not going to sell something just to satisfy the palate of an ever-changing, fashion-led world. You know what I mean? They can grow, and they can kind of grow along. They can grow alongside fashion. the core of the brand will always stay the same. There's a heritage with every brand. You know what I mean? Going back to Chanel, going back to Ralph Lauren, Tom Ford, you know, all the great fashion-led designers that are eternally stylish. You know what I mean? Like Chanel was fashion, Tom Ford was fashion, Ralph Lauren was fashion, but they were fashion born out of style. And that's the fucking key. You know? That's the difference between fashion and style. The difference between fashion and style, people think it's the same thing. It's fucking not. I know some very stylish people who hate fashion. I know some very well-dressed, cool-looking people who have no style. Do you know what I mean? They have stylists, do you know what I mean, who can afford to spend money on fashion to make it look stylish, but the fella that they're dressing hasn't got a fucking ounce of style. Often it's said, like, you know, if you see a bandwagon, then it's too late. You know what I mean? And that's what's after happening in barbering. You know, we were doing this before it was cool. You know, we were doing it in barbershops that were charging £6. We smoked cigarettes while we were cutting hair. We ate sandwiches while we were cutting hair because we were busy. We didn't have time to break. And all of a sudden, finally, we were rewarded for all our years of being the poor cousin of hairdressing. You know, barbers were like, when they started getting their own identity, it was kind of, oh, you're really cool and you're trendy because you're a barber. You know, you're a bit, you know, it was almost condescending. You know, we had, you know, the hairdressers sitting at the top table, kind of throwing the barbers a scrap because all of a sudden they were charging more than 20 quid a haircut. But then something got broken. The higher level, the higher brass of the industry started telling barbers how to fucking act. And said, well, you can't say that, you can't do that, and you have to do this, and you have to do that, and oh, no. And it was kind of, what the fuck are you talking about? Do you know what I mean? Where were you 20 years ago? You know, now that it's profitable and cool, and now barbering is called grooming, all of a sudden you want a slice of the pie. You know what I mean? That's why, I go back to it again, we will not be falling away with what's happening already. I can see it in every high street. Barbershops are starting to close down. Why? Because we're built in a fucking trend. If this is no longer cool next week, next year, doesn't matter, that's what I do. This has fed me long before it was cool, and it'll feed me long after it's not cool. And that is the core of Barber Barber. It's so good, we named it twice. That's how good it is.